Hello and welcome back to the Variant Cast for another episode. I'm here with the one and only Trent, the man that was tasked with following Rian Johnson around for the better part of 6 years to make sure he did not commit any more crimes against humanity. How are you doing, Trent, and how's the surveillance going?
Pretty good. He has not made another Star Wars movie since I have been watching him, so
Mhm.
all tabs are good.
Good for him, man. It's
Yeah,
the Star Wars movies will age you 7 years per movie. So he
yeah,
got out at a good time. Just made the best one and dipped.
yeah, definitely.
If
And
you haven't noticed already, today is the celebration of the movie that is not loved by the internet. To
no,
say to say kindly, the Last Jedi came out about 6 years ago. At this
hmm
point,
yep,
time has flown by.
yeah,
Like, how did we get here? 6 years after The Last Jedi has released. I guess we're obviously gonna talk about the movie, but we have some other stuff planned, right, Trent? Little other stuff. It's
yeah,
not just Star Wars.
yeah. So if you're not really into the Star Wars talk, we got a little follow up to the Scott Pilgrim episode last week, and we will be covering the Scott Pilgrim TV show that just came out on Netflix, which was I really enjoyed it, and we got some headlines for everybody because I think that the Oscar nominations just dropped, and some other news that we're gonna chat about, and then we're gonna finish it off with maybe some just a quick talk about some movie reviews about the week.
Yeah, no, it's the variant cast. You can expect us to talk about a variety of pointless info in the world of the entertainment industry.
Yeah,
But this is the best place to go for it. So if you're enjoying, make
absolutely.
sure you leave a rating on Spotify or a like or a subscribe. We be staring at that subscribe number. We're like, jumped up from 6 to 7. We're getting lit.
Let's go.
So
Yep.
just know if you hit that subscribe button, I will be consuming some sort of illegal substance for you in your honor. So get on that.
Let's do it.
I'm
Get
just
that
kidding.
number up. Let's get double digits on that.
Yeah, this is our 10 subscriber special.
Yeah,
uh,
seriously.
but just let's just jump into it. We got The Last Jedi. It is the seventh
6 year.
installment,
Yep.
eighth
No, eighth.
installment
Mm-hmm.
in the Star Wars movie mythos.
Mm-hmm.
Obviously, you have great stuff like Clone Wars, Star Wars drones. There was
The
the Clone Wars cartoon that was 2D animated. There
the
was the
Caravan of Courage.
there was the there was the cartoon that was like a movie that was
Rebels.
like a prequel to the
Mm-hmm.
yeah
The Clone Wars movie. You got the
you know
Clone Wars TV show. You got Rebels. You got Star Wars Resistance.
so
So you got
there's
you got all of them, but
yeah Star
on
Wars
the
never
top of
left.
all of these, yeah, on the top of all of this content, I feel like is one movie in particular, and that's the one that we will be celebrating today. It's the 6 year anniversary of the one, the only, the Last Jedi.
Yeah, so I mean this movie, let's just kind of talk about the cultural aspects of this movie.
Mm-hmm.
So as you all are probably well aware, Star Wars was bought, or Lucasfilm, I guess, was bought by Disney um, sometime in the 2000s, and everyone was like knew it was an inevitability that an episode 7 would eventually be made, and it
Mm-hmm.
was. And episode 7 was met with mixed, but I would say overall like positive feelings.
Yeah,
This was also, it's kind of hard to contextualize because now the prequels are looked back a lot more fondly. But like when episode 7 was like announced, it was kind of the common thing was like, just be better than the prequels.
yeah,
um and this one
better
came out.
received than the prequels.
Yeah, and then this one came out and it was like, it was that everyone was like, well, it's better than the prequels. And obviously that has kind of changed as we've gotten further in with how, nostalgia works and just how things age over time.
Mm-hmm.
I think Force Awakens was a good movie. It is basically a carbon copy of A New Hope.
Yeah.
But I mean, I was sitting here today. I was in my office listening to some of my coworkers talk about Star Wars, and I I'm in this office with people younger than me. I'm 24. Most of them are 21 to 22. So not a huge age disparity, but most of them haven't seen like the original Star Wars trilogy. And they all basically said the same thing. It's like, yeah, at one point my parents showed me or someone showed me, but like they just look silly, or they just
Yeah.
don't look like a movie of that scale, and you don't get the same feelings. And I think that is a real thing, especially when you're talking about blockbusters. You
Yeah.
know,
Definitely. And there's definitely like a sense of uh like nostalgia with these movies, obviously, and looking back and like saying like, oh, I enjoyed these movies as a kid, and that's the reason why like a lot of people are so attached to it. But if you aren't introduced to that, I feel like a lot of people nowadays just like say like, oh, those movies have bad effects.
yeah. When most of them don't. Like the
Yeah.
effects kind of are the least of the problems. I think that the dialogue in the original trilogy is a lot more like jarring than the effects to me.
Yeah.
And that's partly because of the time, but also partly because George Lucas has never heard two humans talk to each other. So
Yeah.
it's a struggle. But movie comes out, everyone says it's a New Hope ripoff. What I was getting at there is I do think that was intentional. I think they were trying to reintroduce not only fans to the universe but also first time fans. This was meant to be a lot of people's first Star Wars, and
Yeah.
it was that. Uh, but then they got a little saucy with Episode 8. They got this Rian Johnson guy who, uh, he's what did Rian Johnson directed at the time that he was.
I think he was biggest known for like Looper. It's a show called. It was a movie called Looper with Joseph Gordon-Levitt. It's like a time
Right.
travel
Yeah,
based
yeah, yeah.
movie. Or I'm pretty sure he directed a couple episodes of Breaking Bad. I think he directed a couple episodes of some other things, but yeah, he was like really, really out of the ordinary. And that was one thing that they talked about. I watched. There's a documentary that was released alongside the Last Jedi, and it's called The Director and the Jedi, and it's all about the behind the scenes making of it. It's a really good documentary, but they touch on it in earlier in the movie, but they say like they show a bunch of clips from people on like podcasts and stuff, and they're like, yeah, this Rian Johnson guy, like let's see if he can actually make a Star Wars movie. Like
Yeah.
let's like is he does he have the wits about him to actually like follow through and make a whole Star Wars movie? Because like there was really George Lucas, and then I think J.J. Abrams I feel like was relatively safe since he directed Star Trek, and he kind of revived Star Trek a little bit. And so I think
Yes.
that there was a little bit of a safety net there. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, no, exactly. I think they're the two opposite directors that you kind of go with.
Yeah.
And it kind of feels like it was almost intentional. Um, and like when you think about it, it all the way up until episode 9,
Hmm.
this trilogy almost perfectly mirrors the
Yeah.
original trilogy in terms of both reception and, or at least critical reception, because The Empire Strikes Back is far and far long has been touted as the best Star Wars movie critically, and I think agree with that. If you're talking about the original, I don't know. I'm landing on that there's no good Star Wars movies, but we'll get into that. Um, so Rian Johnson gets it, and the movie comes out, and it gets amazing critical reception. You're hearing from the advanced screenings that this is the best Star Wars movie ever. That was what it was touted as before fans saw the movie. The
Hmm.
critics were saying that this is amazing, And then we went into the theaters, and you know, that's where people's opinions split there, because
Yeah.
obviously you're dealing with a product that has been around for 30 plus years or whatever it was at that time, and people have emotional connections to it. And the Force Awakens, yeah, you get some stuff with Han, but you don't really have, like, he doesn't, other than him dying, spoilers, uh, you don't really have a moment with Han that it like advances or changes the character in any way. And I think
Yeah.
that's probably why there was such a visceral reaction, because this movie does kind of change some of the original trilogy characters a little bit,
Yeah,
or at least
definitely.
evolves them.
Yeah, I think that's one of people's main gripes about the movie, and Mark Hamill's been like vocal about this too. He was very vocal about it in the documentary that I watched, but saying like he very much disagrees with Rian Johnson's take on Luke, and
Mhm.
that he feels that the Luke Skywalker that he played like wouldn't evolve into this, but like he had to accept it because it was the director's vision. And at the end I feel like he came around to it. He never explicitly said like I'm okay with like this version of Luke Skywalker. And I feel like that's a lot of the things that people hold on to is like, oh, Mark Hamill like hated Luke in this movie, so should I, you know.
And like, Mark Hamill, I know Mark Hamill. I guarantee like his feelings on it are not nearly as strong as some of the fans.
Yeah.
Even if he does feel like a certain type of way, he does understand that it was like artistic vision. And
Hmm.
I just think the solution is probably not to use Luke there, but like they have to use Luke there.
Yeah.
I don't know who you could really use otherwise. I don't know
Because
what.
there needed to be an Obi-Wan figure
Yeah,
in this trilogy if like they're staying with like the Star Wars lore. And it felt like they kind of set it up in episode 7 with the school being burnt down and Luke being secluded. And I feel like there was a way that they could have told the movie where it was almost exactly like episode 4 and 5, where Luke just comes out of hiding and says like I was forced into hiding and I'm coming back to save the day. Or
yeah,
they could have done what they did and did something like a little bit more interesting and like plays with our expectations on what we know Star Wars is.
yeah. And like, I understand that it's not what necessarily Mark Hamill wanted, but like at the end of the day, it's not unrealistic. Like,
Yeah.
nothing. When I watched it for the first time, I wasn't sitting there like, oh, Luke wouldn't have done that,
Yeah.
because I remembered Luke being kind of an arrogant asshole that made bad decisions, made rash decisions, and that shows in this movie. I guess let's kind of get into a bit of the plot.
Hmm.
I I mean, it starts out probably one of my probably my favorite opening to a Star Wars movie, because it doesn't take forever to get going. Like,
Yeah.
I don't know what it is about some Star Wars movies, especially with like the prequels. I know the first one starts with like that fight, so it does get going, but like, it just, they set it up so well. In the exposition is 2 lines. They explain that this is all the Resistance has. We're chasing them. We're trying to end the Resistance right now.
Hmm.
That's the setup for the entire movie, and they explain it in 2 lines, and they get going.
Yeah.
There's no talk about galactic trade. There's no talk about peace treaties. There's no talk about how they felt about the breakfast that they had in the morning, or some weird courtroom scene where a bunch of alien figures are standing on a ledge and look down at them or something. Like, there's none of that. There's none of that fluff. It just gets into it, because they had to save the fluff for later, but we'll get to that.
Yeah.
And yeah, we get just some pretty dope Star Wars stuff. Poe is a little shit,
Hmm.
and I think Poe, there's an argument Poe should have just been the main character for the entire trilogy.
Yeah.
Because he had an interesting character here, because like he was an asshole, he was responsible, and he deserved to get demoted.
Yeah.
But they don't really expand upon it in the next one, so it
Hmm.
kind of feels while you're watching it, it's like, what are we doing here? A little bit, and
Yeah,
that's not
definitely.
the fault of the movie. It's more of a fault of where it went afterwards.
Yeah. And that's what I feel like a lot of stuff in this movie was just like retconned in episode 9, or like the I feel like this movie builds upon a lot of the stuff that episode 7 does really well. It's kind of questioning about Rey's parents. It's uh like it expands upon Finn's backstory a little bit. It brings out more Poe Dameron. It gives Leia more to do. It
Mm-hmm.
gives and it just like there's so many characters that are in it for like maybe like 2 to 3 minutes, but they all feel like they have to be there.
I find this as an interesting kind of like, I guess, just note into how like convoluted a Star Wars movie is, right? When you can
Hmm.
watch the movie and you can understand what people's jobs are. This is one of the
Yeah,
only Star Wars movies that you can, because in the next one, I'm like, why are half of these people here? What is their purpose? Why are they in this position? What do they do? I feel like the power structure is clearly laid out. There's the general that I'm forgetting her name,
General Holdo.
General Holdo, who upset people for having colored hair in space. How
Hmm.
dare she? Uh, I'm chill with the fish, but I draw a line at the colored hair. Still so funny. If you're upset about that, you are telling way too much about yourself. Just chill. Just chill, brother. But I think her character makes sense. I can understand that some people wanted it to be Admiral Akbar for some reason that got that moment, and I don't get that. I don't care about Admiral Akbar. They can't
Yeah,
have the puppet of Admiral Akbar emote like they want the character of the like Admiral to emote when she has maybe the coolest scene of all of Star Wars.
yeah,
There's certain lines that have to be delivered that if Admiral Akbar delivered them, I might giggle a little bit.
yeah. Like like imagine Leia and Admiral Akbar saying "May the Force be with you" at the same time. That would have been really bad.
Yeah, it would have been rough. But I think overall, like this, like the way they get into the movie, and then it like kind of transitions to Ray and Luke and stuff, and like it feels almost redundant saying this. Like we don't need the Canto Bite. We don't need the B plot. But I also feel that way about every Star Wars movie. Is like we don't really need the B plot, and I
Yeah,
think it just adds unnecessary bulk. And I'm sure like it was the instruction, like, hey, this movie needs to be 2+ hours. We're making a Star Wars movie, and the way it connects is pretty good. Like they have like the throne room scene, and it kind of perfectly kind of goes into the fleet getting destroyed, and it works really well at that point. But all the lead up I found incredibly boring at the time. And I found it boring on the rewatch, just like the codebreaker stuff. It's just, I don't get it. I don't get why
I
you
don't know.
have to have these.
I, I'm kind of the opposite.
Okay.
I wasn't really a big fan of him when I first watched it, but after the last couple times rewatching it, I feel like it's I feel like the code breaker at least is um like yeah, the B plot is kind of a lot, and if you took it out the movie would probably be a lot shorter. But um I don't know, I think that like he's a good character because I don't know, maybe he's just in it just to serve the purpose of the twist that at the end, but I don't know, I feel like the twist works.
I do think the twist works. I think his character really does work. I think the parts that don't really work are the world building stuff
Hmm.
inside of the casino. And I
Yeah.
understand what we're trying to do. It's just when I know, and maybe again, it's just hindsight. I know that a lot of these things that feel like they're being set up are just never going to like have any payoff or come to fruition. I'm just kind of
Yeah.
sitting there like, oh, okay, I don't really care. But you do make a good point. Like the Codebreaker stuff is pretty integral for the overall theme of the movie. Like this movie, unlike other Star Wars movies, has a theme and a narrative,
Hmm.
which is all about just like there is no good guy, there's no bad guy. This is war, and war is ugly, and that's
Hmm.
really what they're portraying. It's a fairly mature theme for a Star Wars thing. They
Yeah.
talk about. I mean, quick note on this. Like, I think this is the best writing in any Star Wars movie, especially character writing. There is more lines in this that I remember than any other Star Wars movie. Just like the let it die, let the past die, kill it if you have to.
Yeah.
Um, the Codebreaker when he betrays them, he's like, "Oh, they blow you up, you blow them up," and like, there's just a lot of really snappy, clever, quotable lines in this
Yeah.
that I think will probably uh, give this movie like another life in about 5-6 years, like the prequels got when those kids that grew up with them did. Um, but I mean, my favorite stuff in this movie is Kylo.
Yeah.
Kylo Ren in
Kylo's
this
really great in
movie
this movie.
is so good. I'm talking about those quotable lines. Uh, like half of them are from him, and he
Yeah.
delivers it so well. Like it may be the best, like just the best voice
Yeah.
in Star Wars. Because
Hmm.
obviously people are gonna come at me with Vader, but Vader is very over the top. This is more subtle, and it
Yeah.
has like I don't know, it just hits when he says
Definitely.
something. I'm like, yeah, yeah, for sure, man, for
Yeah.
sure.
And like like you could totally tell like the internal struggle that he's having when him and Ray are like in the elevator and she's like, I know you're gonna turn, and he's like, no, like I've seen who your parents are. And then just the whole throne room scene is just so good.
Yeah, I mean that's another great line of his. He's like, they were junkers, sold you for scrap. Like
Yeah.
the way he delivers that line, it's so good. It's so
Hmm.
good. And it's unfortunate that this dynamic, because obviously they end up kissing and stuff later. I don't.
Yeah.
Which it feels like they were building to here. It feels like they're
Yeah.
building to a romantic relationship, but it's not the same romantic relationship that we see in the next movie. It's not the same dynamic that Rian
Yeah.
Johnson was creating. And Rian Johnson was creating this like tense, like there is romance because of where they come from, and like there's intrigue towards each other. But then you get in the next one, kind of just like it kind of just feels like Ray likes him because he's hot or something. I don't know. It's just a completely
Yeah.
different vibe I get in the next
Yeah.
one.
Yeah. And then just them going from her being a nobody, which shows like you don't have to be like you don't have to come from somebody of importance to be a part of something bigger, which is another big theme laid throughout this entire movie.
Yeah.
To her just being like a Palpatine in the next one, and it
It
just it just seems
it
very cheap.
it literally is. I would say the main theme is just anyone can make a difference, no
Yeah,
matter how small or how inconsequential you think you are. Like anybody
you
can
get
make a
that
difference.
in the first scene with Rose's sister, and you get that in the very last scene when Ray saves all of them by lifting a bunch of rocks.
I was gonna say you also get that in the very last scene with the like slave kid using the Force.
Oh yeah,
Yeah, it's like,
definitely.
hey, he's just some slave, but he could be some, like, that's
Yeah,
the entire point of this movie, and then they just throw it away because some Star Wars fans dislike. I don't know.
yeah,
I like I understand their. I guess my biggest frustration with this is a lot of the things people dislike about this movie are the things that they were asking for um, when The Force Awakens came out. All of the
yeah,
discourse and criticism around Force Awakens was just how it followed plot points, just beat for beat,
yeah,
basically. And it really felt set up to do it. Like Snoke is the new Emperor, um, Kylo's the new Vader, Rey's the new Luke, except it's a bit different. It's not going to be I am your father. It's going to be I am your brother, sister, like who knows? We're gonna find out in this movie. And then they
yeah.
subvert those expectations really well. And the term subverting expectations really got memed pretty hard during this.
Hmm.
Because I think that was the reasoning given for the changes. Like, hey, we're not here to make the same movie over and over again. And people got upset. Like I think there's like 4 hour I'm talking about here. I don't need a subtweet. I'm talking about someone in particular. I'm talking about that Mahler guy who has a random like L capitalization in his name.
Oh yeah, yeah, yeah.
I like a lot of long form YouTube content, so it gets recommended to me a lot, and I have to, on any YouTube account that I have, it is a constant struggle to make sure I don't get Mahler videos, because I'll be honest, those are not great videos. I understand that people like them, but I think they like them because it's just saying the things that they want to hear. I mean, you're taking a 2.5 hour video and you're making a 5 hour critique on it, and it's like
Yeah.
an edited video. It's not a just like long form podcast like this where it's just two friends like shitting on it, like whatever. No, this is a edited video, probably taking tens of hours of man hours, all to basically say, oh, I don't like this. This doesn't make sense.
Yeah.
Hmm.
I don't like her because she have pink hair.
I don't like her because she have pink hair. Why can't Admiral Akbar say it's a trap? Hmm? I don't
Yeah.
know. But this movie has, I think, the coolest final scene when they're on Crate, which is taken on a life of its own. If you're looking into like the internet side of things, or I think it's like saltier the Crate, because Crate
Yeah.
is made out of salt. You can look that up if you want some good goofs and gaffs. But it's a really, I think, beautiful place to do a battle, and it kind of feels again like they set up the expectation, like, oh, we're on a snow planet. Don't you see all the white? And
Yeah.
we're look at this. It's basically Empire. Isn't
I
that
remember a lot of
cool?
people being like, are they just taking it back to Hoth for
Yeah.
episode? And no, it was a completely different planet, which I loved.
Yeah, it was one of the coolest planets with the red, and like the way the fighters, I think they were like fighter bikes or whatever, the way they like drug on the ground, so they had like
Yeah.
red coming out, like that was so good
Yeah.
looking. And then when the Millennium Falcon comes in, it's a genuine like clap moment.
Hmm.
And there's a few clap moments in the movie. I think that's the one that really just hits for me.
Yeah.
And it hits because again, Kylo Ren saying, "Shoot that plane, like, or shoot that ship
Yeah.
out of the
Shoot that piece of
sky."
junk out of the sky.
Yeah,
Yeah.
like that. The way he delivers it, and like you realize, oh, the weight to that's his dad's ship. Like,
Yeah.
it's not just the Millennium Falcon showing up and people clapping because it's the Millennium Falcon. It has a narrative reason to be exciting. And I think that's what this movie does really well, is you get all the same Star Wars moments, but they have a reason.
Yeah.
And I think we see that more in Rian Johnson's like work that he does in Knives Out, where everything is so deliberate. Like if you go back and watch that movie after you know a lot of the twists, like you could see things that you didn't see the first time.
Yeah.
And I think he uses that kind of skill in a smaller aspect here, where he's like, okay, this is what's being expected. How can I hit all of these points that are expected, but taking the most absurd route possible? And that's what I've always loved about Rian Johnson. It's just the absurdity of the route taken and
Yeah.
just the difference of the route taken. You could probably get 12 random Hollywood directors to make a Star Wars movie, and they're probably going to make a pretty similar movie based on what the studio's wanting. But then you have directors that will take a chance and do something a bit different. And that's what this was.
Yeah. And I think that or before I put to this next point, I want to say that so along with that behind the scenes documentary, so there's also a version of the movie that you can watch with the director's commentary, which you love to see, always love to see that. But you can also watch it the music only, so the score only Star Wars movie, which I think is super interesting.
Yeah.
And especially for a movie like Star Wars where the music is so prevalent. But I just think that's super cool, and I think that movies should do that more often.
Yeah. Yeah, no, I think let's put some spotlight on the scores, especially when it's like Star Wars. Like, come on.
Yeah.
I just quick note. I don't understand how Adam Driver got that thick. I don't know if it's a camera thing, but like I remember in the theater thinking like, oh man, that is a wide man. But he literally looks like he can't fit through a door. So I don't understand what kind of training you have to do to get that physique, but I want it.
Yeah. It's just like lightsaber training.
Yeah.
Hours upon hours a day.
So, I mean, all in all, thoughts on this movie is it's not a perfect movie, IMO. I think it has its issues, but I think when you compare it to what came before it, what came after it, it really does stand out. And when I'm looking for movies to watch, like I don't want something that is just like everything else. I want something that does it like a bit differently, even if it's, hey, we're gonna make this same movie, but we're gonna do one thing different. Like that, those are generally the ones that I gravitate towards,
Yeah.
and that's what this is to a T. And I think that's why I like it as much as I do. And I know that 41% audience score, people like to point to that. But I don't care.
No, it just seems like a genuinely good Star Wars movie by somebody who loves these movies and loved like playing around in that sandbox for a little bit. And you could tell that on screen, and you could tell that from the behind the scenes documentary that everyone was just having the time of their life making this movie. And then you look at like the actors now, and John Boyega doesn't really want to be involved with Star Wars anymore, which is sad because Finn was really great in this movie, and they didn't really give him anything to do in the next one.
Yeah.
But yeah, this like movie's full of great performances, great writing, great directing. I feel like it's just all around like the best Star Wars movie.
Yeah. And obviously, if you are a Last Jedi hater, you probably didn't make it this far into the pod. But I will say that maybe I can clip this. Regardless of how you feel about this movie, watch Knives Out. There's way too many weirdos that refuse to watch Knives Out because it's a Rian Johnson movie, or way too many weirdos that force themselves to dislike Knives Out because it's a Rian Johnson movie. Knives Out and the Knives Out story, which I'm blanking. Glass Onion. Both great movies. Mm-hmm. Both are worthy of your time, especially if you're into any like whodunit mystery movies. They're probably like the best that has come out in that genre in the last few years, and it really shows a lot of the strengths of Rian Johnson. I don't think that this is his strength, but I would definitely have rather seen that Rian Johnson trilogy that was supposed to happen
Yeah.
as opposed to what we're getting now, which I think
Yeah.
everybody can agree is just very milquetoast and bland. And I think that the fan base is largely responsible for that.
Yeah, definitely. And that was another thing that I was going to point out was I feel like I think there's been 18 directors fired from Star Wars total. Um just due to creative differences, due to the the studio not wanting to follow their creative vision.
Mhm.
But there's been so many directors that I feel like have been turned away from Star Wars even after they've already been working on the movie because of the public perception that this movie got. And I feel like it's not fair that we didn't get a Phil Lord and Chris Miller solo movie because that would have been good.
My goodness, man. What could have been with Star Wars? And I remember after this movie, like, Force Awakens was probably the height of my Star Wars fandom. I was like 15, 16 around that time. And I was really enjoying, like, just the community around it because everything was exciting. There was all these, like you were saying, all these announcements going on. And just unfortunately, because of like the infighting that this movie caused, it really set us back. And I want to say this. It is not a coincidence that Hayden Christensen was done with Star Wars after the prequels. And it was because of the way that the older fans treated the new movies because they were different from what they grew up with. And
Yeah.
then we literally have to experience the same thing again, and I have to watch it again. And like with Hayden Christensen, I was on the side of like, oh, these movies suck. Like that actor sucks. Like I was on that side. And like I now can learn from that and realize like, no, maybe I didn't like the movies, but other people do. And it like these actors and like directors, they don't need to grant your every wish. They just need to make what they want. And I know that's just so preachy because like everybody says, "Oh, I just want them to make what they want," but they don't actually. But like I'm
Yeah.
with Star Wars, that's genuinely the best thing for the franchise is
Hmm.
if there's some creative liberty. It
Yeah.
can't You cannot treat this like it's the Declaration of Independence and you can't revise anything and everything has to be law, and you just can't do that. You have to allow like evolution, especially as it's starting to feel dated. Like the entire concept of Star Wars is starting to feel dated because it just hasn't evolved. And I think this movie has the best depiction of the Force of any movies.
Yeah.
Uh, I think from what I've seen with like the Clone Wars, they have some pretty cool stuff. But that's like not stuff that we generally see in live action. I haven't seen like Ahsoka or anything like that, so I don't know for sure on that. I
No.
imagine they've done some cool stuff there, but yeah, I think that the Force Visions where they're like talking in the same room feels really cool. I think the scene where she is in like all the reflections and she snaps and you hear like the snap echo, that's an
Yeah.
awesome shot. Like genuinely such a cool shot. For I think that was in the trailer as well.
Yeah. And then her walking up to the very front and like seeing her reflection in it, just so
Mm-hmm.
good. And then
So many good shots.
yeah, the even like yeah, back to the throne room scene with Snoke
Mm.
and how he's just like flipping around Rey, throwing her on the ground, and then like it's just like how he can't sense how Kylo is. He's like clouded by his judgment of thinking that Kylo is purely on the dark side, but then it's actually not. Just really good stuff.
Yeah, I think what's cool about that scene is you hear him kind of break down like what he's sensing in his mind. And he
Yeah,
says like, "Oh, he's going to strike down his true enemy." And I remember at the time I thought that was corny, but then when I was listening to it back, I was like, okay, if the Force did exist, you probably couldn't sense like thoughts, like you're thinking mind reading. You probably could just sense motives. or
Yeah.
sense intentions, and he sensed that his intention was to kill someone he wanted to kill. So of
Yeah.
course he would assume that was Ray and not him because he was arrogant, and that's what it came to. I don't think that's like people like to point to that as bad writing. I don't think that's bad writing because a director took creative liberty on what a magical like mind reading force is.
Yeah. And that yeah, that's got like that line has like deeper meaning, like you said. Like if you look into it, it's kind of it's a relatively intelligent line, but it's also works on the surface as like kids who like Star Wars,
Yeah.
which I feel like is a big important part of making Star Wars movies.
I think that's what this movie has a lot of. I think that's what like James Cook does. I mean, not James Cook. James Cook, shout out. He did well for me in fantasy this week. James Gunn does really well. Is he disguises really goofy stuff or disguises really good writing as goofy stuff
Yeah.
to the point where people that don't generally enjoy like intelligent, slow character dramas or character like just developments, like he puts them in a way that it's just a funny joke.
Yeah.
Like a line that if you're a James Gunn hater is quoted because I got recommended a whatever the Zack Snyder project is.
Rebel Moon.
Rebel Moon, yeah. And I for the longest time I've been trying to understand this, and I just genuinely didn't connect the dots because I didn't put Zack Snyder's role in the DC universe at the same spot that like James Gunn's role is, because they're very clear with James Gunn's role,
Mhm. Yeah.
where in the past they weren't really clear with Zack Snyder's role.
Yeah.
So I never really saw them as like rivals, but like Snyder Bros, they hate James Gunn because they feel like he took Zack's job. So I'm like looking at these comments of Rebel Moon, and this guy is clowning in the Guardians 3 line where it's like, one of the animals was like, oh, I'm on the floor, so my name will be Floor. And they're like, oh, is that, oh yeah, genius writing like that. It's like
That animal's been alive for like intelligent for one day.
and the point of that generation that the high evolutionary created was they were imperfect. That's why he's killing them. That's why the
Yeah.
entire conflict exists. Like I struggle with that, and then it's just wow. Just wow. Moving off that, the Last Jedi, I updated my rating. I had it at a 3.5 out of 5 on my letterbox. I changed it to a 4 out of 5. I came to the conclusion after this watching the movie, and I didn't necessarily feel like overwhelmed with joy while watching it, just because like I was just sitting there thinking about what could have been.
Yeah.
You know, it's the biggest what if Star Wars movie that if they just kept going on that route, like I think they could add something special, and whatever didn't happen.
Yeah.
That's fine. But I come to the conclusion that there's just no good Star Wars movies. They're all just so opinion based. Like you can ask 10 people on the street what the best Star Wars movie is, and I think 20 years ago you're probably getting 15 out of the 20 saying Empire. Now,
Yeah.
like I think you would get
Probably the most public persuaded answers that you get asking about a movie franchise.
yeah.
Because like I feel like 9 out of 10 people would not say The Last Jedi just so that they don't start an argument with you.
Yeah. Yeah, no, if honestly, I mean I would, just because I'm like that, but like
Yeah.
if I wasn't like that and some Star Wars boy came up to me and was like, "What's your favorite Star Wars movie?" Like you're probably safer going Revenge of the Sith or Empire or Last Jedi or anything else. Or not Last Jedi, Return of the Jedi. there's way too many Jedi's. Skywalker, Rise of Skywalker. But I mean, at the end of the day, at least we have this movie. At least we have Rian Johnson, who continues to put out high quality movies. So shout out him.
And TV shows. He
And
just
TV
released
shows.
one last year called Poker Face, starring Natasha Lyonne. It's
Mm,
a really great Knives Out style, like who done it.
nice,
It's really great.
nice. He, I was just like looking through like some of his work in the past, kind of seeing what, because I was asking about the like, oh, what makes sense. But yeah, literally, this man does not miss so far.
Yeah.
Obviously, it depends on your opinions on Last Jedi, but like, riddle me this, guys. What is more likely? That Rian Johnson is a terrible director and he somehow has just gotten lucky with the other 6 or 7 projects he's made, because literally Looper is well received. He had a movie in the 2000s that was well received. The Brothers Bloom and Brick, he wrote and directed both of those. And then obviously the Knives Out, Poker Face, and all of that stuff, very well received. What's more likely here? That he is a bad director that made a bad movie, or you just had your feelings hurt? Feels more like the latter.
Yeah.
But that is enough Star Wars for the day. That is your 45 minutes of Star Wars for the 6-year anniversary of The Last Jedi.
Yep.
Let us know if there's any deep dives on movies that you would like to see as their anniversary approaches, or even if not, if there's any movie you'd like to hear us talk about, please leave it in the comments. Like I'm telling you guys, every week, if you just leave something in the comments, I'm going to acknowledge you. I do hope that like in like a year we'll have like actual like viewers, and there'll be like
I'm
people
sure we will.
people going back to these episodes to like go through our backlog, because like that's kind of what these are when you're recording a podcast that like no one's listened to. You're getting backlog up, you're growing your skills and all of that stuff. But it'll definitely be funny just hearing me beg for any sort of validation from the comment section, and hopefully having that at some point. I believe in you guys. You're gonna show up eventually.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And if you're from the future, just leave a comment. Say what year you're from.
Say what
The classic. Who's here in blank.
Yeah, if you could also like say the best burger you've ever had, like wherever that is.
Yeah.
And I will not take any answers in the Northeast. Sorry, guys. It's just not true. I'm sorry. But we watched Scott Pilgrim. What's the full title? You got that?
No.
Scott Pilgrim
Takes Off.
Takes Off.
Takes Off.
So we watched Scott Pilgrim versus the World for the first time. Both of us had never seen it. General feelings on that, I thought it was okay. It was kind of a weird movie, but it's a fun movie. And
yeah, and I enjoyed it.
Enjoyable. Then there's this show. It's 8 episodes, about 27 minutes a piece after the the intro and the credits. I think it's only like 25 minutes a piece, so you can knock this out in an evening if you'd like to. That's basically what I did. I watched it in 2 sittings, and it's really good.
Yeah, it's really good.
It's really good.
I think it might not be fair to say because it's got a little bit more room to breathe, but I really enjoyed this a lot more than the movie.
I mean, we could say that, but also like about the first episode shits on the movie. Like the first episode basically retells the movie a little bit.
Yeah.
At least the first 2 acts of the movie, and it's just better than the movie.
Yeah.
Like the way they speak, the jokes, everything is just better.
Yeah, and the animation style really lets the creative liberties like shine. Like we were talking last week how he held up that shitty drawing of Ramona's hair, but in
Mhm.
this one he actually draws like a fully fledged
Yeah,
like head of hair that was like in the anime style, and I
and
thought that was good.
we won't go directly into spoilers for this one. We will talk about them in a second here, but this is
Yeah.
a newer show that has come out, so I do recommend that you watch it, even if you haven't heard of Scott Pilgrim, which I would be surprised if you didn't. Even if you haven't seen Scott Pilgrim, this is worth a watch. Obviously, its own Scott Pilgrim. I'd recommend watching it. It's Edgar Wright movie that is definitely a part of culture in the 2010s.
Yeah.
But this show is kind of a more definitive version. But at the same time, watching both does kind of feel like, okay, I can kind of connect a few more things.
Yeah. And I feel like it's a really good companion piece to the
Yeah.
movie. It feels like Edgar Wright, his like DNA is almost all over this project,
Well,
which
yeah.
I think like works excellent in some ways. Like there's some really good bits, kind of like hinting at a possible movie that was made, but yeah, I just really enjoyed it.
Yeah, I think this movie really wanted to like expand on the just mythos. I know it's a graphic novel, so it feels like this one almost just like retells a graphic novel.
Mhm.
Um, what feels like more one to one than like a movie can, and that's just reality of like a movie and how things are. But then you see
Yeah.
things like almost used directly, and it's like, oh wow, they did adapt this pretty well in the movie. It kind of gave me more of an appreciation for the movie
Mhm.
because it's a pretty good adaptation. When you talk about like movie adaptations, generally are not that one to one,
Yeah.
and especially something as ridiculous as this, the fact that it was as one to one, as it was, is pretty spectacular.
Yeah, definitely. And yeah, it just allowed a lot more a lot more arcs, I feel like, to be told in this one, and you get a lot more in depth with a lot of the characters that were only in it for Scott to defeat last time. Not only that, but even like the side characters all got their time to to shine in this, I feel
I
like.
I did the band got the short end of the stick,
Yeah,
and
I
that
do
that
agree.
sucks, and it's probably because of like some story stuff that we'll get into here in a second, because you really can't talk about this show's story without getting into spoilers.
Yeah.
So we'll get into that in a second, but overall, definitely recommend it. Just go watch it if you have the ounce of interest in it. But let's go ahead and get into spoilers and
Yeah.
talk about how this just completely rips off the TV Surfers episode from Fairly Odd Parents.
That is very true. Love that episode. So
My
was
favorite
not mad
episode.
about it.
Yeah, no, it's
Oh
my
yeah.
favorite episode for sure.
um, but yeah, it did a great job of like subverting our expectations, like we were talking about with the Last Jedi.
Hmm.
But yeah, it like goes completely different from the way that we think it's gonna go, and I feel like from then on, like it's just like it's just great character character development between like I'd say that there's a good like 5 to 7 characters that got a really good story arc in this.
Yeah, I think what like overarching arc is between the exes and Ramona, and Scott to an extent, but Scott is actually not in the show for most of it.
Yeah.
Like I remember he obviously the big twist is the movie basically happens one to one with the show up until the first fight with the ex, and in that first fight with the ex, he just dies in one punch and he loses in one punch. And with that, like that confirmed that if like change pops out, they're dead. Like they're just dead, which I wasn't necessarily like thinking during the original movie. Like I was like, oh, okay, change popped out. Like they're probably just gonna go respawn. We're in some silly universe, but no, like they're dead. Like those people
Yeah.
got killed in that fight, and it's just over for him. And that's an unfortunate way to go. But hey, such is life.
Yeah. Uh, yeah, it was great to see like the different uses of the like kind of video game visuals. That was cool.
A lot less
And
fighting than I expected. I kind of thought that with it being animated, you would see almost more fighting. Like it would be like an episode thing. It'd be like partly an action show. It's not that, and that's not a bad thing. It has just like you said, more character stuff where you get to see characters develop, and they all have like the same voices, which is just like crazy because
yeah,
we talked about it last week. The cast for this movie is unreal, and the fact that they got them back for voice acting work is also just crazy.
yeah, and they all really good voice actors.
Yeah.
Like Aubrey Plaza did so good.
Mm-hmm.
Like Chris Evans did really fucking good. They're all so good.
I love the one line where Chris Evans says like, it's only voice acting. I can't do voice acting. It's only live action for me.
Yeah.
It's
Yeah,
fun,
really good stuff.
Fun little bit. There's just a lot of great character interactions, and you get to see this group of like evil exes that you meet in the movie. All of those same like evil exes like slowly become friends, and you get to see different interactions between characters. So if you ever watch that movie and like you really like the characters, but you wish you got to see more of certain people, like this is exactly what you're looking for, because you get to see characters you never thought you'd get to see interact. And that's, I think, the fun part about this is it's almost a continuation, because it doesn't nullify anything in the movie. Like it doesn't retell anything in the movie. And the movie actually exists in universe, basically.
Yeah.
And Edgar Wright is a character in the show. Directing.
Wrong.
What's that?
His name is Edgar Wrong in the
movie. Yeah.
Did you know that? But yeah, great stuff.
I think my brain might have just filtered that out, but yeah, it's basically the same like story that we saw.
In universe, one of his friends like thinks that he has a sleep paralysis demon that just wrote a screenplay in his sleep for him, and then he started producing a movie with Lucas Lee starring as Scott. That was pretty good.
I do think like legitimately the first episode does that origin just so much better than the movie. Like Ramona being interested in him makes just more sense, and I don't know if that's not seeing Michael Cera's face, because like Michael Cera's voice is fine like as the character, but like when you see Michael Cera's face sometimes you're just like, okay, he ain't pulling like that. But he do be pulling, so like I ain't throwing disrespect on Sarah's name like that. But I really like, I love the first X that comes in. He ends up being a pretty pivotal character because he gets to take like the fortune of Goose and all that great stuff. But there's like this one change from the movie. In the movie, it's a email that he sends him saying, "We're gonna fight," and that's cool and all, but the like him delivering it in a blizzard, like and then it not getting read, I think it's just funnier. And the scene or the shot or the clip of him walking in the blizzard and putting it in there, I think added a bit more to that character, who was probably one of the least developed like evil X's in the first one, because he was just like the first one. But that would have been like just like a cool little nugget. But I liked the Netflix stuff, the Netflix DVDs. I was confused by like what year it was supposed to be.
Yeah, I was too, because I was like I'm pretty sure it's set in like the early 2000s,
right?
And then there's something that points to it being like set current times.
Yeah,
I forget what it is.
I
But
forget what it is. I think it's in the last episode. They make a reference to something recent. Um, and maybe they just messed up on that reference because like I feel like it is because when he goes to the future, he's like, "Wow, you guys have VR set up?" Like you would say that in 2000, but you wouldn't say that if you were from the 2020s.
yeah,
It's very strange, but it's a really good show. It's short. I would definitely watch another season if they did one. I want to see more of like Scott and Ramona. I think that dynamic is like the most fun part about
yeah,
it, and you don't really get a ton of that in this show, which I think is for the better because they're telling a different story. But I think it's something that like if they made another one, I'd want to see that for sure.
yeah. The best line in the whole series. It's like, I'm gonna die right after I just found out I'm a cinephile.
Oh
I
yeah,
was
that was
dying.
good.
I was dying.
Yeah, that was solid. And there's a bunch of great lines in it. So please watch it if you could still afford a Netflix subscription in year of our Lord 2023. But
Yeah,
that's all for our recap on Scott Pilgrim. It's been a fun little franchise to kind of delve into.
definitely.
I think I would definitely like read a graphic novel in that style for sure.
Yeah, yeah.
So hopefully they I mean I'm sure those exist. I could probably just hit that Google and find something. But moving
Yeah.
on.
And I don't know if I. Oh yeah.
Uh,
Go ahead.
do
I was
you
gonna say
want
I
do
don't
you
know
want
if
to
I
move
would
on,
have
Trent?
watched. I was gonna say I don't know if I would have watched this series if it weren't for the movie, but I'm glad I did.
Yeah, I think honestly I will kind of just to shit on one thing. I'm gonna shit on the title. Scott Pilgrim. Just the name Scott Pilgrim makes me think
He's
completely
gonna
different
be in it.
things. Yeah, like it's just like the last name Pilgrim like just makes me think of pilgrims.
Oh,
And like the name Scott Pilgrim like I just a thought. It doesn't I don't know if it really conveys what it really is. Obviously I'm not saying change his name or anything, but like what is the franchise? Is the franchise really just like Scott Pilgrim? Because I feel like it could be bigger than that, you know?
yeah,
But
yeah,
I mean, sometimes you make those choices early on in the creative process, and there's no turning back. So hey. But Netflix co-CEOs, their pay is going to be $40 million this year each. So 80.
is that your news headline?
Yeah, that was my transition into the news headlines. Yeah,
I got you.
that was not not my rebuttal to what you were talking about. But go ahead.
Oh, I don't know what I was gonna say.
You were gonna
What was it?
talk about Tubi. It was the biggest news
Oh yeah,
story
yeah.
in the world. There's gonna be DC movies on Tubi.
Free
We
to
have
stream at home. You can stream the Batman. You can stream Suicide Squad if you want to.
wow. Can I stream the Suicide Squad or just Suicide Squad?
Whatever you feel like. You
Oh
can
my
stream
god,
it with the or without.
this is crazy. Here's a rebuttal to that, right? A24 movies are gonna stream exclusively on HBO
Hmm.
Max and Max. Stream exclusively on HBO and Max under new deal, including Priscilla and Ironclaw. That's a big get right there.
I think that makes sense. I
Yeah.
think HBO isn't Euphoria an A24 thing,
Yeah.
and they had the Idol, the hit show The Idol. How could we forget?
Hit show The Idol starring Johnny Depp's daughter.
Yeah, I feel like A24 kind of seems at home on HBO.
It really does. I think they've always tried to have the stigma like we're premiere movies.
Mhm.
And that's kind of what A24's stigma is now is like, oh, we're the premium movies. Like, oh, the people that like movies watch A24 movies. Yeah, you have to have a certain level of intellect to understand an A24 movie. So that's a big get for them, especially in the wild wild west of streaming, where Netflix is paying probably more for this Rebel Moon thing. Just they probably got these streaming rights for every A24 film for less than the production of Rebel Moon. I just want to throw that out there.
If both Netflix CEOs just get their money to get their annual salaries together, I think that they could buy the Snyderverse from DC.
Oh, that's the funniest thing is those petitions trying to get Netflix to revive that.
Yeah.
And what I'm hoping they do is they revive it, but like obviously they don't have the rights to the characters, so we just get like knockoff Superman and knockoff like Aquaman and stuff.
Yeah, they'll probably just show up in Rebel Moon. Let's be honest.
Yeah. But it'll just be Ray Fisher is the only one. Yeah. And Gina Carano.
Yeah.
They'll show up. Gina Carano's the new Wonder Woman, and it'll be like Power
Girl.
I was gonna say that, but I think that one's already taken. Marvelous.
Oh, yeah, Power Girl is a DC character.
Yeah. No, we're running out of strong female names. We gotta come up with a new adjective to get back in this.
Yeah.
But I think that for the majority is didn't you watch Blue Beetle?
I did watch Blue Beetle.
Should I watch Blue Beetle?
Oh, you did?
No, I'm asking should I watch Blue Beetle?
If it was 2004, I'd give you a different answer. No, it's a completely fine movie.
Yeah.
I don't know. It doesn't do a lot with the main character. I feel like it should have been more focused on Jaime. The villain is like very like generic. It's like oh, they stole my power, I want it back. And it's just like basically fighting. It's basically like the first Iron Man movie where he's fighting like the dude with the same suit, he's fighting like a dude with the same powers. And
that's what I got from it. It was like Moon Knight plus Iron Man.
Yeah, but it's kind of Venom because it's like kind of a symbiotic relationship between Jaime and the scarab that's attached to his back.
Oh, so like Moon Knight. Not quite, but yeah.
Yeah.
I'm just saying that because of the scarab thing.
Yeah. No, it definitely got some early 2000s superhero movie vibes. I would say that you could probably just go ahead and pass on it.
There's no connections to the larger DC or the future of the DC universe?
No.
Interesting.
Other than George Lopez calling Batman a fascist.
Interesting. I'm glad George Lopez was able to express those feelings on Batman. I don't. Yeah. I'm actually thinking. I was gonna say I don't understand how he's a fascist, but thinking about it, kind of a fascist. I guess George Lopez has a point. So, as we ponder George Lopez's opinions on the political just environment that we're in right now, and it's going to be a long pondering as there's a lot to unpack, starting with Shark Boy and Lava Girl into the George Lopez show, and then trying to figure out when he got skinnier and if that was okay, because I'm still trying.
Was it a drug issue?
We're going to get to the bottom of that, and we'll be back next week with another episode of the Variant Cast. I think next week we're gonna have like our best of show, right?
Oh yeah. And the week after that, I think we got another in-person. I think we'll probably do another in-person show.
Yeah. So we'll have more like trailer reactions and stuff. So if you've made it this far, be sure to like and tell us what you want to see reacted to or just talked about. We would really appreciate that, as you know. And again, thank you for watching, and we'll see you next week.
Yeah. Thanks, guys.
See ya.
Deuces.